Some things watch us, even when they cannot move, even when they shouldn't move. But if the room grows too quiet, if your back is turned, they remember. Tonight, we unseal a silence that should have stayed locked away. This is the quiet room, silence undone. And this is The Doll's Eyes, the haunting of Robert. Key West, Florida, 1904. A young boy named Robert Eugene Otto, known to friends and family simply as Gene, received an unusual gift, a doll. Nearly his size, dressed in a sailor suit, with lifeless black button eyes and a stuffed expression that hovered between vacant and knowing. The doll was said to have been gifted by a Bahamian servant working in the Otto household, an individual often whispered about, accused of practicing voodoo or abia behind closed doors. The story says this was no ordinary toy, it was a vessel, a sentinel of resentment, or something older. At first, Gene and the doll were inseparable. He named it after himself, Robert. He dressed it, fed it, talked to it in long, whispered conversations. Nothing seemed unusual, until the voices started. Gene's parents would wake to hear their son talking, only to freeze when a second voice responded. Deeper, not Gene's. Things in the home began to break, silverware flung across the kitchen, paintings slashed, furniture overturned. Gene always had one answer: Robert did it. And the doll would be found in odd places, standing in windows, sitting at the edge of Gene's bed, facing the door. Years passed. Gene became an artist, moved away, but when he inherited the family home, he brought Robert back with him. By then, the stories had already woven themselves into Key West's folklore. Visitors to the house claimed they heard footsteps in the attic when no one was there, that the doll's expression would shift, that if you laughed at it, it would remember. Neighbours said they saw the doll moving from window to window. Some swore it was looking at them. Children avoided the house. Pets refused to enter the room where Robert sat. But it wasn't just the outside world that felt his presence. As Gene Otto grew older, his health failing, Robert's attention seemed to narrow, focusing solely on him. One night, weeks before his death, Gene's wife found him slumped against the attic door, trembling. He was usually a stoic man, but that night his face was ashen, his eyes wide with a terror she'd never seen. He refused to say what happened, only mumbling about the cold and whispers from behind the locked door. But the next morning, a deep, fresh gouge ran across the attic door, far too high for human reach, as if something with long, sharp claws had tried to scrape its way out. Gene insisted the doll was trying to get to him. He was found dead in his bed a few weeks later, his final moments overshadowed by that chilling, unspoken fear. Some say he looked as if he died of sheer fright. When Gene died in 1974, his wife locked the doll in the attic. But Robert, it seems, does not like to be forgotten. Today, Robert lives in a glass case in the Fort East Martello Museum in Key West. But he's not just on display, he's hosted. The staff say if you take his picture without asking for permission, bad luck will follow. Car crashes, lost jobs, sudden illness. But it's not always misfortune that Robert inflicts. Sometimes it's something far more insidious, a psychological siege. One curator, Sarah, a skeptic who worked tirelessly with the doll, meticulously logging visitor interactions and the endless apology letters, began to experience something deeply unsettling within the museum's quiet hours. She started hearing it, a faint, almost imperceptible whisper just beyond the edge of her hearing, seeming to follow her, especially when she was near Robert's case. It wasn't a distinct voice, more like a dry, rasping breath close to her ear, a constant, unsettling presence. She'd dismiss it as museum drafts or her imagination working overtime. Then, the objects in the storage room directly behind Robert's exhibit began to shift. Heavy display cases moved inches from the wall, leaving dust trails. Locked cabinets found ajar. Once, Sarah returned from her lunch break to find a child's antique rocking horse, previously stored under a sheet, now uncovered and positioned directly facing the back of Robert's display case, slowly rocking back and forth as if recently used. No one else had been in that section of the museum, but the most terrifying incident occurred late one night. Sarah was alone, finishing paperwork, when a clear, distinct, childlike giggle echoed from the main display hall, followed by the unmistakable rhythmic creak of a swing set, as if a small, joyful weight was moving on it. The museum has no swing set. She froze, heart hammering. The sound persisted for a chilling minute before fading into an unnatural hush. Sarah fled that night and never worked a late shift alone again. She continues to work at the museum, but avoids Robert's exhibit after dark, now a haunted believer who has experienced Robert's silent, menacing influence firsthand. A wall behind his case is plastered with letters, apologies, pleas for forgiveness, visitors writing to the doll, asking him to lift whatever they believe he's done to them. Whether a product of belief, guilt, or something darker, Robert's reach seems to grow stronger with every story told. I'm sorry. Please, Robert. What makes Robert so deeply unsettling isn't just the stories. It's the silence, the blank stare, the way we project life into his stitched frame and feel something looking back. He doesn't speak, but he doesn't have to, because his legend, once whispered in childhood rooms and creaking attics, has now spilled into the world, into you. Robert's story ends not with peace, but containment. A museum case, a warning sign, and a growing list of apologies, whispered too late. But the silence he left behind didn't stay still, because across the ocean, in a different decade but within the same chilling breath of the uncanny, another doll was waiting. Not hand-stitched by love, but dressed in the costume of innocence, masking something ancient. Where Robert's gaze was mischief, turned malevolent, Annabelle's was something colder, more calculated. Another quiet room, another cursed cradle. The evil had crossed borders, and it had found a new home in a ragdoll's smile.